Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing very good. Let me get this started. Tell me a little something about yourself.
First off, before we get started, should I pronounce your name Stefan or Stefan?
Stefan.
Stefan. Very good.
Hmm.
All right, Stefan. All right. So, well, to answer your question, a little bit about myself. I'm 49 years old. I'll be the big 50 this year. Going to celebrate
Congratulations.
the big 50 this year. I'm married for the last 21 years to a wonderful wife, my wonderful wife of 21 years, and we have a 15-year-old son who's a avid basketball player. He's not a metalhead like his dad. I don't know. That could be a good thing, but he's an avid basketball player. He's very smart. He's got me outsmarted already. And other than that, that's kind of pretty much my personal life in a nutshell. I've been a metalhead since the age of 12, and it's been downhill ever since.
Ah, nice. I wanted to ask you this. What was your first metal album that you ever got? Like the album that basically started your whole love for metal, and what actually really dragged you into being like, okay, I'm gonna see where this will go and how far, like, how many bands I can find.
Absolutely. So, just to give you a little more information, I'm number nine of 10 children. I come from a very large family. And I grew up with a lot of different music variety and a lot of different styles of music. My parents were very big with country western music. I had eight older brothers and sisters who had all sorts of music tastes, everything from Motown to hard rock to classical music. We were a very musical family in that regard. So I have very fond memories of growing up in the 70s. And on Saturday evenings, we had one of our prized possessions of our entire family was the family stereo system. And it was a console turntable that had the turntable inside this console where you'd actually have to lift up the wooden top, and the turntable was inside, and to the right were controls for the 8 tracks or cassettes. So that was one of our prized possessions of our family. Every Saturday night, I have very fond memories of my brothers and sisters. My parents would allow us to spin one side of a record, and everybody got to take turns to spin a record. Since I was just a young boy, I didn't have a record collection just yet. So lots of times I would, my old one of my sisters, who's closest to me in proximity of age, um, she had a lot of hard rock records. She had a lot of Ted Nugent, Kiss records. I was exposed to Kiss at a very early age. Van Halen, AC/DC records. I always tended towards putting on one of those records more than any of the other records, like the Motown records or the country records that my other siblings were playing. Why I don't know. I just always kind of leaned towards those records. But now to go ahead and answer your question, that in the summer of 1983, I was 12 years old, and one of my older sisters asked me to take a walk with her. It was a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and she asked me to take a walk with her to a local department store that was close to our home. And this department store was called Zare. That I don't even think they're around anymore, but it was much like a Target is today or a Walmart, not quite as big. Um, and we weren't in the store very long. Now, another thing I should tell you is my parents invoked a very deep work ethic in all of us kids. At a very young age, I had paper routes. We had jobs. In the neighborhood we lived in, where I grew up in the 70s, we lived around a lot of elderly people, and my parents had us younger boys, especially, go out and do a lot of errand running, paper routes. We did a lot of shoveling of snow, shoveling driveways, cutting grass, things like that. So my parents had us do a lot of that as I was growing up. So we always had a little bit of money in our pockets from those jobs. So growing up, with a paper out especially, and having a few bucks to spend at a local department store, that was kind of a big deal back in 1982. So I recall my sister asked me to go to the department store with her, and I did. And we weren't in the store very long. I don't even remember why my sister wanted to go to this store. But just before we were literally ready to walk out of the store, before we walked out, she says, "Hey, I want to go over here by the records." So we go over to the music section, and they had a few bins of records, and on the wall they had where the cassettes and 8 tracks were. And off to the left, they had posters and other rock or music memorabilia you could buy. Well, my sister starts stumbling through some of the records, and I just stood next to her, and there was a bin of records, of course, staring me in the face. So I decided to start thumbing through the records as well. Now, one particular record caught my eye. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who it was. I just picked it up to literally just to look at the image on the cover as it caught my eye. My sister immediately told me to put the record down. It was devil music. That I was not to purchase the record. I was not to buy the record, and I was immediately to put it down. So, being a rebellious 12-year-old and in my natural rebellious state, I told her she couldn't tell me what to do with my own money. I could buy that record. She pleaded with me to not buy the record, but of course, I took the record straight up to the cash register, and I had just enough money with about 30 cents left over to purchase the record. Had no idea what I was purchasing. You could have asked me, Ken, what's that record you're buying? I couldn't have told you because I had no idea. I strictly bought it in spite of my sister. So I take the whole way home. We walked home. She yelled at me about buying this particular record. So that evening, Saturday evening, was family turntable night. So as everybody started playing their sides of their records, once it was my turn, I'd proudly take my new purchase up to the turntable and put it on. Now, just before this, some of my sisters were appalled that I even brought this particular record into the house. Put the record on. The minute I put it on, I thought it was one of the worst records I ever heard in my life. I had no idea I didn't even think it was music. I thought it was absolutely horrible. I didn't know what it was. Of course, to save face, I had to say I liked it, but I really didn't. I didn't know what it was. So in the ensuing days and weeks and months, or that we were getting turntable time on Saturday evenings, as was the custom of my family, I kept putting that record on, of course, because I didn't want to lose face. A lot of my brothers and sisters would tease me about spending my hard-earned money. They would tease me that it was terrible music. They were, making fun of me about having and owning and playing this record. But the more I actually played the record, the more I looked at the cover and read the lyrics and looked at the imagery of the band members in the record, I started to understand it. And as I started to understand it, I actually started to like the record. And that record and band was Venom's Welcome to Hell. And that record, the imagery especially of Kronos, Mantis, and Abaddon, their image and the long hair and the leather and the chains really drew me in. And as I looked at it and I read the lyrics and listened to the music, I started to understand it and I started to like it. So what I did is I tried to start finding some other bands that looked like them. And I remember one of my older brothers, he's a couple of years older, but he goes, "That's like the band you see in those magazines." I said, "What magazines?" So that's when a couple of days later, he takes me over to the magazine store and says, "Those magazines." And he points out to these metal magazines like, I forget what they were at the time, but Metal Forces, I think, was one of them, Hit Parade, or some other magazines that I started looking at. And then that's when I started finding other bands that maybe looked like Venom. And then, of course, buying those records, and sure enough, they started sounding like Venom. So the album that got me into metal was, in fact, Venom's Welcome to Hell. And to quote a good friend, I didn't come up with this quote, but to quote a good friend, I don't think we choose metal. I think metal chooses us. And on that day in 1983, metal chose me to be one of its warriors.
That is awesome. That's such a great story, actually. I love it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, actually. Also, like, I wanted to ask, how big is your collection, actually, of all those vinyls behind you?
Well, my vinyl collection consists of about 2,200. I got about 2,200
Wow,
vinyl records. Yeah.
that's great.
It's, I would say, 99% metal. Now, I don't know if this is the cool or the uncool thing to say, but it's the truth. I don't listen to anything else except metal. I know lots of people say, "Oh, God, that's closed-minded." Sorry.
That's exactly what I do, too, actually. It's
There we
exactly what
go.
I do.
All right. Right on. So, yeah, I don't listen to much. I listen to a little bit of punk rock. And not much else. So what you see behind me out of these 2,200 records, you might be able to take a small stack of them that may not be metal, but then the rest is all metal, whether it's heavy metal, black metal, death metal. It's not all death metal, power metal, and anything in between, thrash metal. It's metal. So, yeah, 99% metal. That's just my vinyl, though. Now, I actually have more CDs. I have about 4,200 CDs
Oh, wow.
in my collection. Yeah, so that's just the vinyl behind me.
Also, like, by the way, I love that T-shirt you're wearing, Cancer. I love that band, actually, really do. Big fan of them.
Oh yeah, this is actually a replica of the 1992 tour shirt
Ooh, nice.
that they did, I believe. Yeah, it's the US 92. US
Ooh,
92. It says right on the sleeve US 92 tour. This
nice.
is actually a replica that I got from someone. I don't know if I'm supposed to say the name because I think it's kind of an underground thing he does. But anyways, I got the shirt from him.
Oh, nice. I also know that like definitely from your YouTube channel, like you have a bunch of demo cassette tapes actually. What gave you the idea of actually thinking like, hey, I want to make a whole YouTube channel based on like uploading all demo cassettes of death metal from like the past like 20th century, like from the 90s upon the 80s, like during those times.
Yeah, yeah. Good question. Yeah, so uh, it's just my passion for metal. It was my passion, especially for U.S. '90s death metal. Um, I was there and around when the birth of death metal came. Now, this is the big debate. What was the first death metal album ever
Hmm.
recorded? Right? My opinion: Possessed Seven Churches.
That's
Right?
exactly what I go with too.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of people say death, scream, bloody gore, and I don't think there's a wrong answer there. There's no wrong answer there. However, my opinion is Possessed Seven Churches was the first death metal album ever created. So, when that album came out, I was 15, 16 years old. Now, although that might have been to me the first death metal album that was ever released, um, I didn't feel that death metal really didn't take a hold, especially when it came to tape trading and fanzines and demo bands and the death metal underground being created and formed in the death metal movement. I didn't think that really started happening until around 88, 1989. So I got involved with tape trading and fanzines around 1989, 1990. And, Stefan, throughout the years, I've just acquired a very large collection. Like most metalheads my age, I'm sure I'm not the only metalhead that is almost 50 years old that has a collection like this. I'm sure a lot of people my age that have been collecting metal for this long have a collection similar. So, as I started, now I started the channel about 5.5 years ago. And back then, I as I looked through YouTube and looked at some channels, and I was checking out music and some old music and from the '90s and death metal, I didn't see a channel that was dedicated to U.S. '90s death metal, or more or less created just and dedicated to death metal as a whole. So my first intention was to start a channel and dedicated to just '90s death metal. However, I realized then that I have so many, obviously being from the States, so much US death metal. And as I started looking through my demos and EPs, I thought to myself, I wonder how many people have actually heard this. I got so many bands, so many demos and EPs where a band, an amazing demo, maybe they only did one or two demos, then you never heard from them again. So I thought to myself, I wonder how many people have actually heard this. So with all that cooking in my brain and rolling around and spinning around, I just decided I was going to start a channel. I looked up how to start a channel. Then I looked up how to create a video. And once I got all that information together, I started creating the videos first, created a few videos, and then I started the channel and dedicated it to U.S. '90s death metal. And again, it's because of my passion for it, and also to inspire. I did it to inspire people in hopes that the masses would hear some of these lost gems. They wouldn't get lost. I would hope bands and musicians today would take inspiration from it and keep that death metal flame alive, especially for U.S. '90s death metal. So that's the long answer, though.
Oh, awesome. And I gotta say, like, I've been listening to so many demos that you put up on your channel, and I've gotten to so many new bands because of you, actually, and it's amazing.
That's hearing you say that makes it all worth it. Anytime I put into it, right there, you being a metal fan, and that makes it all worth it. Exactly. So thank you to
Oh, yeah.
you for
Thank you.
saying that. Thank you, because that is the single biggest reason that I have the channel and I created the channel and that I still do the channel is because of comments like you just said. So thank you
Oh,
for saying that.
you're very
It does
welcome.
mean a lot to me, and it's that's the whole reason, man. If one person just come up like you and says, "Hey, you've introduced me to so many new bands and so many things I've never heard," and I do get that a lot. That's exactly why I do it. So mission accomplished, man.
Awesome. Because like I always looking forward to everything that you put out because I'm like, oh, did Ken put up a new demo? Oh, when is he gonna put up a new demo? I'm excited to see what else is there. And then when you do, I'm like, yes, finally some new music. I want to be able to see what this band is.
A new one will go up tomorrow morning. So I'm doing. So I typically only do one. I was typically only uploading on the weekends, just one upload a week. But during these times of our quarantine
Yeah.
and being locked in and locked down, I've decided to start uploading twice a week. I still upload on the weekends, and then usually Wednesday mornings I'll go ahead and throw up a new upload. So we got a little more music in our lives during these quarantine times.
Oh, of course. And also, I wanted to ask, what was like the first ever demo of death metal, like ever death metal demo that you ever got, that you first
Ooh.
got your hands on?
That's a good question. I think somebody actually did ask me that before, and it was real hard for me to remember. So I'm glad you're asking it now because maybe I have a better answer. As far as death metal is concerned, I would probably have to say it was a local band here. It's Yeah, I think I'm going to have to say that it was a band called Carnage. They were originally called Metal Onslaught. They were more of a thrash band when they were Metal Onslaught. Then they formed into the band Carnage, and they had a demo called Killing Spree in 1988, 89. And I think I was just getting out of high school, so I think it was around 1988, late 88, early 89 that I saw an ad for them in a fanzine. So I sent them some money and got the demo, and I think that was the first demo I ever got was Carnage Killing Spree demo. They're a band from Illinois. After that demo, they never did anything else. They did one demo before that, and then they did the Killing Spree demo. And like I said, as the band they were called Onslaught, they did do an actual album, which I do have on vinyl. But as Carnage, that Killing Spree demo was the last demo they did. Until this day, that's still a ripper of a demo. It is some of the best death thrash you're going to put on from late '89 or from late '80s, early '90s, and it is on the channel. So if you want to check that out, just search that Carnage Killing Spree demo. It's there. But if my memory is serving me right, I think that might have been the first what we'll call death metal demo that I ever took ownership of.
Nice. And also, like, has there ever been like like what like like, what would be like one of your like most memorable death metal concerts that you probably ever been to? Like
Ooh,
the one that you first
oh,
like went to that you're like, oh, that now I like you saw that band first live and you're like, oh, this was a great show.
one of the you know what that's a good question too. Probably one of the best shows I think I'd ever been to back then. In 1989 was the first Michigan Death Fest #1.
Oh, that one. I remember seeing like
Yeah.
that. I saw like that news video actually on YouTube about Michigan Death Fest.
Oh yeah. We went. I went to the first. So I met a good friend of mine. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Morgue from Illinois, the old '90s band Morgue. They did an album called Eroded Thoughts.
I think I seen like what the logo looked like. I think so.
Okay.
I think I
Well, their
definitely saw.
demo, which is called Severe Psychopathology, is on the channel. So you can check it out there. You want to check them out for sure. And Dark Descent just released now their album came out in 92, 90, yeah, 90, 91 or 92. Eroded Thoughts came out. And just about 2 years ago, I think it was, Dark Descent Records re-released it on vinyl and cassette and CD. Or actually, I think Head Split did the cassette and Dark Descent did the CD and the vinyl. But so you can definitely get it. But I was good friends with the bass player singer of that band. His name was Brad Boldeck. He's actually in the band of Sconderer right now. And him and I would go to shows. We met in 1989, and I think we would go to like a show every weekend, and sometimes a couple during the week. We went to every show that there was in Chicago. We only live about 40 miles south of Chicago, so it was less than an hour drive for us to get into the city of Chicago. So there's always a show in Chicago, even till this day. There's just a ton of shows every day and weekend in Chicago, any given night. But we made the I think 5 or 6 hour trek up to Michigan Death Fest for Michigan Death Fest #1, where Morbid Angel headlined.
Hmm.
And probably one of the biggest highlights for me was seeing the band Fatal from Michigan. Now they had a demo at the time called Soul Burns that is on my YouTube channel. I did pick up that demo there. That was a huge highlight for me to see Fatal. They were very, very, very good live, and I was so glad I got to see them, especially the song "Guts for Dinner." That was a great song, great demo, great live band, and just I think Baphomet played. That was another highlight. Was Baphomet from New York? And then seeing Morbid Angel, that was the first time I'd ever seen Morbid Angel. So seeing them live, this was shortly after Altars of Madness was released. So yeah, that Michigan Death Fest is always going to be one that sticks out for me as being one of my favorite all-time shows.
Nice. How was it seeing Morbid Angel actually back then? Actually, 'cause I seen like video clips of like old concerts, and I'm like, what was it like back then? Seeing like the original lineup of Morbid Angel before like all of it changed right to like where we are right now.
Yeah, magical. You know,
Nice.
like a religious experience. Back then it was so new, it was so raw. It was so untapped. When you see guys that look like they did, and with the inverted crosses and the imagery they had, and the smoke going, with the fog machines, and hearing the music and hearing David Vincent's vocals, and seeing these guys headbanging, and then they would start. The Trey would always cut in like a pentagram into his skin, into his arm with a razor blade. I mean, you were just in awe. You no one was. These are the first times these bands were doing stuff like this, so you had not seen it before. So to see it for the first time, a little bit of a system shock, but in awe, just in awe of the whole experience. So, like I said, kind of like a religious experience. It was one of glorious times for sure.
Awesome. Because I actually did see Morbid Angel back in 2017, actually in New York City. That was like the first time I actually ever got a chance to see them live, and it was really like it was I like words can't even describe how excited I was for that show because I've always wanted to see Morbid Angel live, and I've actually like listened to so many of their albums and got more into understanding like what their music was more about back when I first discovered them, and it was really nice.
Yeah, yeah. Morbid Angel is definitely a band that never disappointed me back then. I've seen them many a times since then with many different lineups. Um, I think they're just one of the. No matter who's in the band, I think they're always just one of those bands that's always going to put on a good show. Just because of the. I mean, how can you not with that playlist?
Oh yeah.
With the Morbid Angel playlist. I mean, I could be up there playing and it's still going to be good, right? I mean, it's yeah. With a playlist like that, it's going to be real hard to disappoint the crowd. So I think they're just always one of those bands, no matter who's in the lineup, that they're always going to be a very fun to watch.
Oh, nice. I totally agree with that. Also, like, I'm like a huge diehard fan of Cannibal Corpse. Have you ever saw the original lineup, actually?
Yes, I did.
Oh, nice.
I think the first time I saw Cannibal was 90. It was either 91 or 92. Maybe it was 92. They came to Chicago on a tour, and yeah, Chris Barnes was singing.
Ooh,
I don't
nice.
remember who they were here with. I can't remember who it was. But I do know, I think it was around 92 that I saw him with Chris Barnes. So, yes, I did see the original. Now, if that's what you call the original from 92, I don't know if Rob Roos was in the band still or not.
Bob Busa? Yeah, actually, yeah, he was actually in the band
Maybe
during
okay.
that
If he
time.
was, then that would have been the original lineup. So yeah, I think so. I did see him in '92. So as long as Rob Rousse was in the band, then yeah, I saw the original lineup. All again, another band. I mean, even back then, they coming off of the first album, Eating Back to Life. I mean, there were some
Oh
classic
yeah.
songs on that album. Immediately, that album. I mean, that album had classic songs immediately. Skull Full of Maggots.
Oh yeah.
Just lots of good songs on that album. So for them, that was just another one of those bands that, no matter what lineup they had, they're gonna sound they're gonna be a joy to watch just
Oh
because
yeah.
of their back catalog. But I'll be honest, I'm still a huge Cannibal fan to this day. I mean, I still love, I love what George Corpse Grinder Fisher did with the vocals, and no offense to Chris Barnes at all. I loved his vocal style in the first few records, but yeah, I mean, again, just one of those bands that they could do no wrong in my book. They're a hell of a band.
Oh yeah, no doubt for sure. And also, like, out of every vinyl that you have in your collection, do you actually own any vintage vinyls, like ones that were like so old that like it's very hard to find these days, actually?
Probably. So yeah, I have. Like I said, so the collection is a mixture of different genres of metal. So I absolutely do have a lot of records from back in the early to mid '80s that were on very short presses or very low quantity presses, or they were bands that were one off bands. It was the only album they did, or they were private press records. So I have a lot of those in my collection. So yeah, I've been told some things that I post or some things that people have seen me with or know that I have. Yeah, I've been told some of them are very rare. So I think one of my favorite things, I do have an original press from Rayvon Records of Merciful Fate, Nuns Have No Fun EP.
Ooh.
So I have an original press of that, but the thing that makes it even more special for me is that all five original members autographed it. So I
Oh,
have all
that's
five original
nice.
members of Merciful Fate's autograph, and King Diamond even put a special little note on the top that says, "Nuns do have fun." And so that was that was a nice, fun little note to get from King Diamond. So that's probably one of my favorite things in my collection is just something like that because it holds a lot of it holds a lot more. I don't know what monetary value it holds, with the autographs being on there, but I never sell anything out of my collection. So anything I buy, I typically keep unless a very good friend it's is I know is going to really wants the particular item, and I know they're going to cherish it and keep it with them till the end of their days. Like I'm going to keep my stuff. I may give something to somebody, but for the most part, I never sell anything, and I always keep anything I've ever gotten. So for the most part, so
Ah, perfect. No, because like I do that same thing with my vinyls. Like I don't really give them away either. I will sell them or anything because a lot of them have so much value to me that when I remember when I first get it, I'm like I don't want to give something away that or just like get rid of it all of a sudden. Like that's on something I love.
yeah, absolutely, I agree. These things are this stuff's in my blood. I mean, I don't wear band shirts to identify with a group. I don't buy records to identify with anybody or any particular group. This is my wardrobe.
Oh
This is
yeah,
what I wear.
same
This is
thing
what
for
I
me too.
like.
Oh yeah.
These records are what I like. These are part of my bloodline. I hug my records before I go to sleep and say good night, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. So it's these were my children first. Before my son was born, these were my babies. And yeah, so I know that's kind of weird to say, and people are probably looking at me like, "Wow, what a weirdo." But I think most metalheads would understand that, though.
Oh yeah.
I think metalheads have a very deep connection to their collections, no matter who it is or where they're at or how old they are or how long they've been collecting. If you've been collecting for the last couple of years or the last 2 decades or 3 decades, like me, I mean, you're going to have a connection to your collection. I think that's true for any metalhead. So any metalhead watching this, I think, is going to understand.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like you said, like my shirts that I always wear are always like my wardrobe. Like I remember one person saying to me, saying like, "Oh, how come all you have is band and we all you just wear is black and band T-shirts?" And I'm like, "That's because that's who I am, and that's
Absolutely.
what I am. Because
Yep.
I'm not gonna change anything about that."
Absolutely. Don't. Don't, because I'm not either.
Oh, of course, no doubt. So, also another thing I was gonna ask, actually, I always wanted to ask this question. Actually, I wanted to ask, like, when did you first actually discover black metal? Actually, when did you first hear about that going on in Norway? Actually, during the time.
Yeah. So I think the first black metal record I ever got was it was
Oh yeah.
Venom's Welcome to Hell, because I 100% consider Venom black metal. So I could definitely say that was my first black metal record. Now I didn't, as far as the first wave of black metal, probably about maybe a couple years later, I discovered Bathory. So once I discovered Bathory, probably a couple years after I discovered Venom, I think Celtic Frost was in there as well
Yeah.
somewhere. Although Celtic Frost was a little more death metal, I thought, than black metal. But yeah, I mean, Venom's Welcome to Hell was for sure the first black metal record, and then a couple years later, so probably when I was like 14, 15 years old, I discovered Bathory, and started as I liked that because I'll tell you the first Bathory record scared me. First time I heard it, it absolutely scared me. But then I started finding more bands that sounded like them, and then obviously you go going into the late '80s and early '90s. You started finding the second wave of black metal, Dark Throne.
Oh
being
yeah.
A Blaze in the Northern Sky, Emperor, in the Nightside Eclipse. Before that, they did the split with Enslaved.
Hmm.
And then before that, they had the demo, or actually some people don't consider it a demo, but the Wrath of the Tyrants.
Mm.
So that's, and then, just kind of went from there. So yeah, I would say, again, going back to that Venom record, that was the first black metal record. And then after them, I think it was, Bathory, and then it kind of went to other things, other bands. And then, like I said, in late 80s, early 90s, I discovered the second wave of black metal. So,
Awesome. Cause so like, are you a fan of Mayhem actually? Do you like the band Mayhem?
absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
I'm not a
nice.
fan of, per se, of any of the
Oh yeah.
newer stuff. I do like, I mean, I probably the last record I bought from them might be Wolf Slayer Abyss.
Oh yeah, that one.
I think that might have been the last record I bought from Mayhem. But Death Crush, incredible.
Oh
Dom
yeah.
Mysterious,
Mm.
incredible records. I mean, just those are
Oh yeah.
live and lip sync records. I mean,
Mm.
those are just for I'm not even going to say black metal, but just for extreme metal. I mean, those are some of the most talked about classic records that you want to get and listen to and have in your collection if you want to get into extreme music, because yeah, those records are,
Yeah.
in my opinion, some of the best black metal that ever came out. But yes, I absolutely love Mayhem, love the old stuff. Like I said, not too much. I know, after Wolf Slayer Abyss, I just didn't keep up with them, I guess. And after that, and I know they've made other records since,
Oh yeah.
recorded other records, but I think that was the last record I bought from them.
No, I agree with that actually. The only album, to be honest with you, the only albums I have from Mayhem are just their classics. I don't own any of their new material at all. Actually, just their classic albums, because that's the only ones I prefer. I don't really like what they're kind of doing now. I like the old way that Mayhem used to be back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, me too. That's that classic Norwegian black metal sound and feeling. Yeah, absolutely,
with
absolutely.
with that absolutely raw quality of like hearing that actually, it's like you're there actually when you're listening to it.
Oh, it's great. It's wonderful. Again, I remember. So I have the first Burzum record on vinyl that I got
Ooh.
from actual Count Grishnak himself. This is when he was
Oh.
called Count Grishnak. Now, I did receive a letter back with the record, but I didn't keep that letter. Why? So many people, because I used to do a lot of tape trading. And I used to write to a ton of bands back in the late 80s and early 90s. And, back then, it's kind of like today if you were to keep an email.
Yeah.
If you emailed a band and they emailed you back, you don't keep that email. You probably delete it, right?
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah.
Back then, it was the same thing. As I got these letters back, I didn't think about keeping them. I didn't think anything about it. I thought it was just a letter this dude that was my age, like 19, 20 years old, wrote me back, and okay, I read it and I threw the letter away. So, think about stuff like that back then. But yeah, I do have that record, and I remember writing to the Count, and I did receive a letter back from him. I don't think he had much to say, if I recall, in the letter, but that was one of those records I remember. So again, one of those records that I think does have some monetary value. The first press on
Oh
Death
yeah.
Like Silence of Burzum,
Mm.
his first record. But the fact that even more so the fact that I got it straight from him, and he wrote me a letter and sent me that record back. So that's got a lot of sentimental value to me too. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like that's actually something that's really valuable, especially when it comes from Norway and all that, from Count Grishnak himself back in the day.
absolutely, yeah. But again, one of those glorious times back then.
Oh
Just
yeah.
the feeling of sending $3, $4, $5. For a record, it's probably a little more, but just sending $3 and $4 to a band, and you'd wait anxiously for that package to come back, and what you got back in that package was it was I think I said this before, but if for those people looking for the fountain of youth, get into metal, because us metalheads found it. It's called metal,
Mm.
and I think it keeps us young. I think it keeps us young, and it's and I think we found them, because you get that. It's still today when I get a package in the mail, I can open it up and I still get that feeling, that wonderful feeling of, oh my God, I can't wait to put this on. I can't wait to hear this. It was the same back in the late '80s, early '90s when I used to write bands, get back demos. So yeah, we found the fountain of youth, man. It's called metal. You want to stay young, get into metal. It'll keep you young.
Of course. Do you still remember what the letter actually said, or you don't really remember anymore?
No, I don't remember it being. I do not. I don't remember exactly what it said. I don't. I don't feel. I don't feel he wrote very much or very long. I think it was a pretty short letter, if I recall. It probably was something towards the effect of, "Here's your record,
Yeah.
thanks," and that was it. Which is probably why I didn't keep it, probably because it was something towards that effect of, "Here's a record you ordered, thank you for your support."
Yeah.
And so that's probably why I didn't keep it because, okay, so it was kind of like an invoice, right? So that's probably one of the reasons I didn't keep it. But yeah, I don't recall it saying much.
Ah. Oh, so like, what other bands did he write to actually back in the day? Like, which other bands did he
Okay,
actually, got in contact with during the time?
it's the better question is probably who didn't I write? I wrote to lots of bands, lots. I wish I could tell you who and how many, but I don't recall. I wrote literally to, I mean, it could be in the hundreds of bands. Some of the bands I wrote to that I do recall and got their original demos before they even recorded their first albums, bands like Grave. I wrote to Jorgen Sandstrom and received their Anatomia Corporis Human Eye demo from 1989. That was before they recorded their first album, Into the Grave. I wrote to Johnny Hudlin from a little band called Unleashed
Ooh.
and got their demo. It wasn't the first demo, but it was the 1990 demo, The Utter Dark. I remember him writing me back, sending me that demo, and saying that they were recording their first album for Century Media Records called Where No Life Dwells.
Oh yeah,
That was
man.
right before they recorded that. So those were a couple bands from Sweden. I wrote to the band Massacra from France. Got their Near from Death demo before they recorded their first album that was called Enjoy the Violence. Great death thrash from France. Those are just a few of the bands. I mean, and these are just some of the overseas bands that I'm remembering. But I literally, I wish I could tell you, Stefan, but I just don't remember how many and who I wrote. I wrote as many bands that I could write. And there were times when, I always didn't have money to send bands for demos, but I would write to them anyway. And what you could do is back then there was a little piece of paper called an IRC, and what that stood for was International Reply Coupon. And what it was is if you wrote to a band, you could in the envelope you could put this IRC coupon, and that was their postage to write you back. That was basically like sending them a stamp to get a letter back. Lots of times I didn't have the money to send these guys for demos or tapes or 7 inches or anything. So I would just write them a letter and insert the IRC and in hopes they'd write me back. And almost all of them did. So I became very good pen pals with people. And as you become pen pals, lots of times I got these demos because I wrote to them 2 or 3 times and told them how much I liked the band. And I tell them, well, as soon as I get a couple bucks saved up, I'm going to send you a few bucks for your demo. Lots of times I get the demo for free. So it's that's just how things happened back then. And but yeah, it was. But so many bands, man, so many bands. I wish I could remember them all, but I can't. But so many of them.
Nice. What would be your favorite format actually? CDs, vinyls, or cassettes? Like, what do you prefer the best?
Vinyl.
Ah, you're a vinyl.
Vinyl's my first love. If I could convert everything to vinyl, I probably would. Actually, I shouldn't say that because there are some things I like the sound of it better on CD, believe it or not. But a vinyl, if I could find something on vinyl first, I'd typically buy it on vinyl, and then I'll go to CD. And I'm not real. The only thing I'm not real big on is I'm not real big on full lengths on cassette. I don't typically buy a full length on cassette. I don't mind a demo on cassette. That's fine because that's what I grew up with. Bands put out demos on demo tapes, and
Yeah.
then the goal was to get a record deal to produce a vinyl or a CD. So that's just kind of what I grew up with. So I don't mind demos being on cassette. I'm not real big on buying full lengths on cassette. I'll be honest with you. That's just me. So if it's a demo on cassette, awesome. Anything else, I'll typically try to buy the vinyl first. And if it's not on vinyl, I'll buy the CD.
Awesome. For me, I'm
But I
like,
always try to
oh,
get vinyl first.
oh yeah, of course. For me, like actually personally, like I'm really starting to get into cassettes actually, because like I just started a cassette collection last year, and I really just like the vintage feeling of being able to use cassettes again because like back you know I was born in the I was born in 1994 actually, so I wasn't really like actually around to like see like death metal take its like biggest like the boom back in the day actually. So like now that
Sure.
I have a chance to be here and finally see what it was like to listen to a band on its cassette format, it gives me that feeling of like, ah, so this is what it was like back in the day. I like this vintage feeling. It feels like I'm living it back in the day when it was still brand new and bands were just coming out with these albums.
Well, that's actually a really good way of looking at it. I actually never thought of it that way. That's cool. That you say that you could you're getting to hear that vintage sound of the cassette format. That's actually a very good way of putting it. Bravo.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just like I said, my thing is vinyl. I just love the sound of that fuzzy snap, crackle, and pop of the vinyl. I still love it till this day. So yeah, vinyl's my thing. But I get what you're saying about the cassette. That's actually a very interesting take on that.
Oh, thank you. Because actually, I was just able to like actually my I actually was able to get the actually Cannibal Corpse's Butchered at Birth actually in an old vintage cassette actually it has and it still has the on the side of the J card saying that you can write to the band and it has like an advertisement on it saying oh here's our T-shirts large and extra large and in the PO box and
There
I
you
was
go. Right to them.
and when I saw that, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool!" So this is what it was like. You get like a tape, and you get to get the T-shirt from this. I was like, "That's so different than going online and finding it on like eBay or something or
Oh,
Amazon and
absolutely.
getting a shirt or their website."
And back when I was writing bands, I mean, so how did you discover bands? Back then, and the best way that I found was through fanzines. Fanzines were huge for finding. Back then we didn't have internet, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet. Your biggest, or at least my feeling was the biggest source for a metalhead to find new bands were fanzines. You could go to, get a few fanzines and they would have nothing but ads, tons of ads for bands, reviews, and if you thought something sounded interesting, you wrote that band. That's exactly what I did. So I literally still to this day have stacks of fanzines from the 90s that I purchased. And out of those fanzines is where I found the ads and the information to write a lot of the bands that I wrote, where I ended up getting the demos that I have today, especially for the channel. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Because one other thing I also wanted to ask, like, actually, yeah, how many fanzines do you have? Actually, how many did you get?
I don't know, dozens, several dozen. I don't. I never counted them all. Actually, it's from the '90s. I mean, I still have a lot of the magazines, like from a lot of the Metal Maniacs magazines from the '90s and things like that. I mean, I have crates full of those, literally. But as far as magazines and fanzines from the '90s, dozens. I still kept dozens of them. Now, I might have given, or maybe some didn't make. I've moved throughout the years, obviously, so maybe some didn't quite make the trip, or may have gotten left behind or something. But for the most part, I've kept a good chunk of them, and I have, I've kept dozens till this day. So,
Ah, awesome. Also, I don't know if I'm correct or not, but I want to make sure I'm correct. But as on the left, I'm looking at is that an actual picture disc of Autopsy Severed Survival?
yes, it is. Yep,
Oh,
that is. Yeah, I don't remember when I got that, but somehow, some way, I got it. But yeah, it's. But I actually have that on regular vinyl, that with that cover, and then I have the original cover, Severed Survivals, the original cover. So I have those two versions, and then somehow, some way, I acquired that.
awesome. Because for me, I've gotten really into picture discs. I don't know. I just like when the vinyl's playing, like I see the picture of the album on it. It's just something I really feel like, in my personal opinion, that I like the best when it comes to certain, like when it comes to vinyls, really.
Yeah, yeah. No, I typically don't play the picture discs I buy. I'll be honest with you. I typically just use them as decor, like you see back here. And I have my other walls are covered in other picture discs, but yeah, I don't. I actually don't have a ton of picture discs. I maybe have maybe two, 3 dozen picture discs, so not a ton, but um, I don't think I ever spin them. I think I typically just once I get them, I find a spot for them on the wall somewhere down here in the crypt, and that's where they stay for their remainder of their life. And that's it. But typically, like I said, that's probably why I have the other versions, and those are the versions I play on my actual turntable. So picture disc I typically leave just for decor.
Now you actually now making me want to start doing that with my picture discs. Maybe I should just display them somewhere. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I always thought it was. I always thought that was to me. That's what I always thought they were there for. I just never really I never really thought that. Oh, you should play this just because you could find the other version of it. You could find and I'll be honest with you. Probably the reason that I think that is I think that black vinyl sounds better than colored vinyl. That's just my opinion. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there's any scientific uh, you know evidence that'll support that. But my feeling is black vinyl sounds better. So I always try to buy everything on black vinyl first. Sometimes I'm a little late to the party and I can't always get some of the newer stuff because all the black's sold out. But typically I try to find it on black vinyl first because I think it sounds better. So really, that's probably another reason I never play the picture disc. That I just use them for decor because I just don't think they have the same sound as the black vinyl versions. So
Yeah, I understand that because I hear a lot of people prefer black vinyls than when it comes to like actually having a vinyl collection itself because I think they just think the sound quality sounds a lot better.
yeah, I most certainly do. Like I said, I don't know if there's any scientific evidence that supports that theory. I just think black always sounds better. That's just my opinion.
Oh, awesome. Also, like one other thing I wanted to ask actually, this is something I was just like actually just thinking right now actually, and it's like, do you think about starting like also another channel too, besides not just death metal, but also doing like another genre with the demos?
Since I only have metal, death metal, I mean, I have a lot of other. I mean, I have a lot of black metal demos and heavy metal demos, things like that. But no, I no, I know. So to answer your question is no. I don't ever think I'm going to do another channel. Now, I'll be honest with you, I have been asked about because I did some reviews for a short while on the channel. I don't know if you had were subscribed to the channel at that time, but I did for a short time do reviews of new bands. If new bands or labels sent me some new releases, I was doing reviews. I did about five or six. I then decided to stop doing reviews. Um, and I started the channel strictly as music, and I didn't want to veer from that. I didn't want it to become something different. I didn't want people all of a sudden to see me on the channel giving my opinion about some new record or demo tape. I just didn't feel that's exactly where I wanted the channel to go. I started this channel to inspire people to get this music out to the masses so that these lost gems could be rediscovered, especially to the younger generation. And that's where I wanted to keep it. And I didn't want it to become, hey, look at me, I got this opinion about this new record or something like that. I didn't want it to become that. So I decided to stop doing the reviews and just keep it strictly music. So, but no, I will probably never do another channel. This will be the only channel I ever do. And hopefully we can keep this one going for a while.
Oh, awesome! Because I'm looking forward to whatever you put up on your channel. I always get excited to see what else, what other demo that you have to put out.
I got lots more. Still got lots more planned. Lots more to upload. I got some new things actually that some people have sent me. That so and I posted that last year on an editorial I did on the channel. I had posted that if people do have, so if you want to see a demo, and you don't see it up on my channel, send me a message. Send me a message and ask me if I have this particular demo you want to see or you want to hear.
Sure.
If I don't have it and you do, if somebody does, send me the files. Send me the MP3 files. Send me a scan of the cover, and I'll upload. I promise you, it'll get uploaded to the channel, and I'll give that person full credit. I'll mention them in the section. I'll mention their name and everything, and says that this demo came courtesy of this person. And with that said, I just recently got about four new things. One of them I just posted this past week was that Violent Fury demo, the Black Mass Offering demo from '95. A good friend of mine named Pat Wilding, he does a YouTube channel called Ground Zero Salem, and he had sent me a copy, not a real copy, an original copy, but he had dubbed it for me on cassette, and then he sent me a scan of the cover, and that's what I used to upload to the channel because I did not have that demo. So he sent me that. So same thing, and I gave him full credit for it. Put a link to his channel and everything, and so thanks, Pat. He's awesome. His channel is great, and yeah. So anybody has that, contact me. Let me know, and if you like, that's why I don't know if you've heard me say this before, Stefan, but I don't call it my channel. I call it the channel because it's our channel. It's everybody's channel. Let's make it that. Let's,
Yeah.
the more people that can send me things to keep the channel going, because I still have plenty on my own that I can upload, but the more people can send me, because I don't have everything, so the more people can send me and the more people that can contribute, let's keep it going, man. Let's keep the channel going.
Oh, for sure. Because there are a few death metal demos I think I saw before, but if like I don't know if you have them actually, but if I'll probably send you like a name of it if you actually do.
I'm sorry for what's that again?
Oh no, I was saying like I have a few death metal demos that I was like
Oh,
trying to find if you have any of them, I'll write to you to see if you have it.
absolutely, yeah, yeah. Let me know, and if I don't, and they fit in the category, you send me the files and everything. Absolutely, they go up, and that was and that was another thing. A question I got was, do I take requests? People were asking. Absolutely, again, if all you got to do is send me a message, send me an email, and ask me, hey Ken, do you have this particular demo? I'd really like to hear it or see it. Maybe somebody had it at one time and don't any longer. Maybe they heard it a few times and really liked it, and they haven't heard it in a while. You know, if I don't have it and they have the means to digitally send it to me, uh, by all means, let's get it on the channel. Let's expose it. Let's get it out to the masses for sure. So absolutely.
Nice. Also, like if I also wanted to say, oh, actually, yeah, I wanted to say thank you for one thing. I actually was trying to find the old like Mortician demo from like the very first one, and I
Mm.
found it on your channel, and I want to say thank you for actually having that on there. I was looking for that for seeing like where the band's demo was for like before they made their other albums.
Yeah, not the 1990 demo, you mean?
Yes, that one, demo number
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that demo I received from Will Raymer himself
Ooh,
back in
nice.
1990. Yeah, so yeah, that's got a lot of special. Actually, Will and I were good friends for a short time. We lost contact throughout the years, but for a while we were pretty good friends. But yeah, I remember getting that demo from the band many years ago. So that's another one, that holds not only, I don't know if it has any monetary value. I'll be honest with you, Stephen. I don't typically, um, I don't typically look or research for anything in my collection that might be, worth money or might be have monetary value. Typically, the only times I ever know about something is if I post something on my social media page that I'm listening to a particular record or CD, and someone will note that that might have value. Those are some of the only times I ever, might look something up or that someone gives me information that, what you just posted might have monetary value. But otherwise, typically, I don't look that up because I'm not into it to sell it. So there's no need for me to research it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sell these records. I'm not gonna sell these CDs. So there's really no reason for me to know its monetary value. Other than someone did ask that I was interviewed not too long ago, and someone did ask, do I have this insured? No, no, I don't. I probably should, but no, I don't. Other than just what the home, I do own we do own our own home, so whatever homeowners insurance might cover, but no, I don't. I don't have it insured, so I really don't have much of a reason to find its monetary value.
Also, like, actually, by the way, actually, I want to say, like, actually, since you were talking about Mortician, actually, and actually, that he gave you the demo, I actually met him as well, actually, just last year, actually, at the show, actually, at St. Vitus in Brooklyn here.
Oh, Will,
Yeah, I
yeah,
actually got to meet him myself.
yeah, he was one of those guys too that he was so into the scene back in the day. I mean, he was constantly doing stuff with his band. He was. I knew he did some traveling. He had told me at one time that he started Mortician because he went with the guys in Immolation to Europe, and that's where he was hanging out with the guys in Unleashed and some of those other Swedish bands. And Will, when he got back home, I remember Will saying like, "I got to start a death metal band," and he did. He started Mortician, and then So yeah, he was so back into the scene back then too. He was totally into the tape trading thing, and just yeah, he's a maniac. He's a good guy. I
Oh
love
yeah.
Will. Like I said, I haven't talked to him in several years. It's been a while, but I know once we get cross paths again, it's going to be like old times.
Oh, awesome. I hope you do meet him again, actually, because meeting him for the first time was literally just one of my most glorified moments. Because I always want to meet Will from Mortician, and I was like, oh, I love these guys, and it was just one of those moments I can never just forget. It was literally a magical moment for me.
That's cool.
And also, he was able to sign this cassette I bought there too, so I have his autograph as well.
Awesome, nice. So
Awesome.
that would kind of be like me for because so my favorite band of all time is Iron Maiden. That would kind of be like if I ever got to meet Bruce Dickinson, and Steve Harris, the bass player. I would, yeah, I'd probably fall down and pee all over the floor because those guys have been my idols for many many years. Ever since my high school years. Those guys have been my idols. And Iron Maiden has been my favorite band of all time. If somebody told me you can only take one band's music out of all this stuff, you can only take one band, that would be a no-brainer for me. It would be Iron Maiden. As long as I could take my Iron Maiden record collection, I'd be okay.
Awesome. Because what would you actually now I want to ask you this because I'll tell you what mine is after. What is your all time favorite band of all time? Like the band that outclasses every band that you like. What would have to be like your number one?
Iron Maiden.
I mean,
Iron Maiden, for sure. I discovered them when I was in junior high, actually. A friend of mine at the time, I think I was in like seventh grade, so I was like 13, 14 years old, seventh grade. I remember I had this friend, and he would come to school, and he would have stickers and things like that, or drawings at his older brother. He had a brother that was 2 years older. So his brother was in high school, I think a freshman in high school. We were just like in seventh grade. And he would bring, Trapper Keepers or our folders, and he would have these pictures of Eddie on, that were drawn on, and he'd have these Iron Maiden uh, pictures and things like that from the magazines, and he's showing me Eddie, and I was really, caught with Eddie. The imagery of Eddie and that the face and all the pictures I saw, the trooper, and I was just really drawn to it. I didn't know, I knew the name Iron Maiden, but I didn't know what the band sounded like. I didn't have any Iron Maiden music at the time, and he explained to me. This friend of mine explained to me it was a band. So almost every other day he was coming to school and would show me something new with Eddie and show me a new album cover, Eddie, and Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden. So I was more drawn to the imagery and the cover art of the Iron Maiden records before I even heard of the first note of Iron Maiden. So around that time, I think I was about 14, going on 14 years old, when his friend had asked if I wanted to go with him and his older brother to go see, I don't know, maybe it was 83. It might have been 83. So I was still only 13. But to go see Iron Maiden because they were going to be playing Chicago. And he says, and Eddie always comes out on stage. What? So I pleaded with my parents to let me go to this concert. They had to find out exactly who I was going with. So that the plans were that their parents were going to drop the three of us off. Their parents were going to go to dinner somewhere in Chicago, and then they were going to come back after an hour or two, and then they were going to pick us up. So we had a couple hours that we were going to be able to, an hour or so that we were going to be able to see Iron Maiden. So this friend of mine had a plead with his older brother to please let us go. So the parents ended up taking the three of us. Now, his older brother made us always walk behind him, don't walk with him, because he met some of his friends there. We were just the bothersome little brothers. But we got to go see the Iron Maiden show. I think it was 1983, if I recall. Again, a religious experience. I'd never seen anything like it. It was only the second time I'd actually been to a music concert. The first one I was with some family members. I went and saw Journey. And I thought that was cool. At the time, I wasn't quite into metal yet, and I did think Journey was very cool. But Iron Maiden was the first heavy metal band I actually saw. And it was, seeing Eddie actually come out on stage, this 10-foot Eddie thing walking around, and just not even knowing a lick of the music, just watching what Bruce Dickinson was doing as he's flying around and jumping around on stage and watching the guys headbanging, watching Steve Harris just banging on his bass and Nico on the drums and just the whole, the explosions and the fire and Eddie walking around the whole thing, the dual guitars, just it, it, I was starting to get into metal, but that really brought me into metal. That really was the hook, line, and sinker, as they say. So yeah, Iron Maiden by far. After that, it was love at first sight. No other band has ever given me quite that feeling again. So for me, it's 100%. Iron Maiden can do no wrong in the House of Ken.
Awesome. I love that story. That's great.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Also, like for me, the band actually I would say was really like something that really means a lot to me. Actually, is it actually has to be for me. It's actually Cannibal Corpse.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's Campbell's. They're one of those bands that with the discography they have, and so many good songs. They're going to be really hard to disappoint anybody just with those songs. And those guys are professional musicians. I mean, they're masters at their trades. They're masters. Alex Webster.
Oh yeah.
You're going to be hard pressed to find technically a better bass player. I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist, but he's a master at his instrument. My opinion, George might be the best death metal singer on planet Earth. Some people may disagree, but vocally, what he can do on a consistent basis, not only in the studio, but with all the touring he does, and still till this day in 2020, be able to belt out that quality of death metal with his vocal, that's unmatched. So those guys are professionals, and there's a reason they're the biggest selling death metal band on planet Earth. That's because they've mastered the trade. So absolutely, so it's a good choice. There's nothing wrong with Cannibal Corpse is your favorite band. Absolutely.
Oh, of course. The reason why is because like they've inspired me so much actually for wanting to do so much with death metal. And for me, like in my own personal opinion, like for me, I'm more of a Chris Barnes fan because there was just something about the old albums and his vocals that
Sure.
just like let me tell you, like it just really caught me so heavily when I was listening to like Tomb of the Mutilated and Butchered at Birth. Actually, like I was like, these vocals are so low and so guttural, and I'm like, I want to learn how to do it. So I actually taught myself how to do that actually, and I'm seeing such an improvement with that, and I'm surprised actually because I'm like, I can't believe now I can actually, I a little bit sound just like him when I listen back to it, and I'm like, wow, I actually sound a little bit just like that. That's amazing how I can do
Practice
that.
makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. You just got to keep practicing. That's all.
Oh, of course, and it's because of really Chris Barnes himself that why I'm so into like doing my own vocals. So I give a lot of respect for him and what he's actually done for like during the early Cannibal Corpse years.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, he was one of the, another guy that back in the day he was huge into the scene. I mean he was Cannibal Corpse was they were, I forget what the name of the band was before it was Cannibal Corpse.
I think it was I know there was one called Tyrant Sin that was
That's
like
it.
done.
I was going to say it had the word tyrant. I read Tyrant Sin. So yeah, I mean those guys were doing the tape trading and the bar shows and the demos
Yeah.
back then in the late '80s mid to late '80s. So yeah, those guys did they did their legwork too. So yeah, but yeah, Chris Barnes was again just you know he started doing something different as he went to 6 Feet Under and things like that. More power to him. That's great for him.
Oh, yeah.
But like you said, what he did for the death metal genre with his vocal approach, I think that inspired a lot of other bands and a lot of other vocalists. So that's not something that should be forgotten.
Oh yeah, no doubt, actually, no doubt. And one other thing is that I really love Cannibal Corpse a lot. That I got them as the back of my phone. I made a phone case for it.
That's cool. I used to have that T-shirt actually.
Oh, I actually have this T-shirt as well. Actually, I just I bought it off of Hell's Headbangers. Actually, yeah, do you know that website, Hell's Headbangers?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I'm very familiar with that Hell's Headbangers.
Oh, of course. Like I actually like bought that exact Cannibal Corpse T-shirt on their website actually, so I'm actually very proud to have that one.
Cool. Campbell's a good band.
Oh, no doubt about it. And also, like, one other thing is also too, like, I know you also like, I know you're collecting like a lot of vinyl CDs and cassettes. Do you also have like a good like large variety of old T-shirts or any band T-shirts?
Oh yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I wear is band shirts.
Oh,
So
same here.
yeah, I mean, in rotation, I probably have 3 or 4 dozen right now that are actively in my closet that I actually switch out wearing. But I have now throughout the years I didn't keep because I was much thinner when I was in my twin in the late '80s, early '90s. I was much thinner. So those shirts I didn't keep because as I got bigger, it just didn't fit and I didn't keep them. So I typically gave them away to people, honestly, just because they didn't fit me. But what I do now is I typically don't do that anymore. The last 10 or 20 years, I don't typically give any of my shirts away. I keep them, but what I do is I just if I get tired of wearing it or it gets a little outdated, I'll just pack it up in boxes and put it here in my basement. So I got at least 4 or 5 boxes of T-shirts in the last 20 years that are just sitting down here. I don't know what I'm ever going to do with them. I won't throw them out, so I don't know what
Oh
I'm
no.
ever going to do
Okay.
with them. But yeah, I got quite a few shirts. Yeah.
Awesome. And speaking of when you're saying that that's all the shirts you have, and that's basically all I wear all the time. Every time you can always know that I'll wear a band T-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, short of going, I had to wear a collared shirt to work because I work in a professional office. So unfortunately, I can't wear death metal shirts there. But if it's not for that, you'll find me in a death metal shirt or some kind of a band shirt of some sort.
Oh, of
Absolutely.
course. Like today, I'm wearing a Massacre.
From Beyond.
Yep, that's my
Yep,
favorite album
that's a
from
great
them.
record. Great record. Good choice.
Oh, of course. Like the funny thing is actually like I just got into like Massacre, and I think like early last year because there's like this subscription box that I subscribe to called the Metalhead box. Have you heard about that?
I have, yeah. Yes, I actually have heard that where you can you get a certain size box with certain
Hmm.
prices go up, but you get pay a certain amount of money, you get a certain size box with certain up to 3 records or 2 CDs and a cassette or something towards. Yes, I
Yeah.
have. So to answer your question, yes, I have heard of it.
Oh,
Yes.
awesome. Because actually, one thing is actually the Metalhead box actually, I think they actually got on, and actually in one of the boxes they actually got Massacre, one of Massacre's demo cassettes, actually
So
just for the box itself. Like it was especially specifically only for the Metalhead box person who subscribed to it for that month, and inside it was actually like that Massacre cassette demo. So I listened to that, and that's how I got into them actually.
nice. Well, so there you go. So they're doing their job by inspiring people. They put something like that, and you heard it, you liked it, you obviously bought a Massacre shirt. Now you probably own the From Beyond album.
Oh yes, yes
So
I do.
yeah, actually I have a vest, a denim vest. It was several years back. It had to be more than 10 years ago. But Massacre played Central Illinois Death Fest, and Cam Lee was there, and he signed my vest.
Oh, sweet.
Signed my vest, Cam Lee, and he even drew a little skull on it there, and I still have that. I don't wear the vest anymore, but after I think that might have been one of the last times I wore it. Since he autographed it, I decided I wasn't going to wear it anymore. But I still have it hanging up there. But yeah, autographed vest by Cam Lee.
Nice. And also, okay, this is one question I really want to ask, and I never met anyone actually who ever saw this band live, and or even probably never met the members. All right, have you ever actually saw the band Death?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yep. I saw
Oh,
Death. First time I saw Death was on I think what they called the Grind Crusher tour. I think it was.
oh,
Um, it was 1990 or 91. It was Carcass, Pestilence, and Death
ooh, nice
played.
lineup.
So
That's a
yeah,
really good lineup.
yeah. So they came to a little venue called Medusa's in Chicago. I think it was 1990, maybe 90 or 91. But yeah, that was the first time I'd seen Chuck Schuldiner in Death. Um, and yeah, again, that was probably one of those shows that's going to be in the top 10 shows because seeing Carcass for the first time, we actually got to talk to him outside. My friend Brad and I actually got to talk to the guys in Carcass. We got to
Oh,
talk to Bill
nice.
Steer and Jeff Walker, and we had been listening to Symphonies of Sickness at that time a lot. That was their newest record at the time, was Symphonies of Sickness.
That's a great
So we
album.
got to meet them, listening to that record and then getting to actually meet these guys, and then watching them live. The only thing is Ken Owen did not play on the tour. I think he was something about he was in school, I believe, still, and he couldn't do the tour because of his schooling. And I think it was the drummer who was in the band Devastation out of Texas, the thrash band,
Yeah.
their album Signs of Life. I think he was the one who filled in for Ken Owen on that leg of the tour. But we got to see Carcass live. Then Pestilence with Martin Van Drunen singing and playing bass. That's with Martin Van Drunen. They were on their Consuming Impulse album.
Oh
So
yeah.
getting to see, because I thought that was one of the greatest death. That's probably my top 10 death metal albums ever. Is Consuming Impulse,
I love that
and
album.
then getting to see Death, Chuck Schuldiner and Death was amazing. So yes, I did get to see Death before Chuck passed and left us. But yeah, it's again one of those shows that'll never leave my brain.
Awesome, because I've always for me, I can never get a chance to see Death with Chuck Schuldiner now that he passed, actually. So and he also is yet another also inspiration to me, and when it comes to like death metal, because I've seen the documentary Death by Metal, and I've listened to so many of his albums, and I'm like, this kid really had the spirit of death metal in him. You can definitely tell he was so passionate about what he was doing.
Oh yeah, you said Chuck inspired. I think Chuck inspired a movement. I don't think he inspired just people. He inspired an entire world by what he was doing and the way he was taking his approach with metal. He was inspiring the entire world. He inspired tons of tons of people, not just in Florida and California and here in the states. His inspiration goes a lot wider. It goes a lot farther. So yeah, Chuck was. I think Chuck was. I don't. I think we'd be hard pressed to find anybody who's into death metal today that would say that Chuck Schuldiner wasn't some sort of an inspiration. Because what he did for death metal and the metal community in general is just it's unchallenged.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And what would you say like is your favorite death album actually?
Scream Bloody Gore.
Ah,
Yep,
no.
Scream Bloody Gore. Yeah, my roots are in the old school, man.
Oh,
So I'm always going to go back to those first records. And take no offense to Leprosy, great record, pull
oh
the
yeah.
plug, great song. Living Monstrosity from Spiritual Healing, another great album. James Murphy played on that, great
Oh yeah.
leads. So take nothing away from those albums. But for me, the first time hearing Scream Bloody Gore when I was, I think, 19 years old. And I got introduced to that record strictly by its cover. I had a friend that I had worked with at the time. I worked at a grocery store at the time when I was in high school and just getting out of high school. And this particular friend went to a local record store that we used to buy a lot of our records from. And he says, and he liked some heavy metal. He liked Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, things like that. And he says, I bought this record from the store. He goes, I don't really like it. It's a little too harsh for me, but I think you might like it because you like that more harsh stuff. And because he knew I was getting into more like heavier, faster side of metal, and he gave me the record, and it was Death, Scream, Bloody Gore, and I had never heard it. So I said, I'm looking at it, and as I'm looking at it, I said, wait a minute, this guy's in that other band with the, and I'm trying to make connections, but as I put that record on, that was it was one of those records you didn't hear too many other records like it. Like I said, there was Possessed Seven Churches I heard before that, but this may have taken it just a step further in its extremity, especially in its heavy, because it was a heavier record than Possessed Seven Churches. Although
Oh yeah.
again, I still claim Seven Churches is the first death metal album that was ever recorded.
Oh,
Um,
of course.
Scream Bloody Gore definitely was a little bit heavier of a record. So just one of those albums you'll never forget. But my favorite death album of all time is screenplay score for
Ah,
sure.
nice. For me, like it's actually symbolic.
Symbolic. Another, yeah, another good one. Another. You know, again, one of those bands that their entire with that discography. How can you go wrong?
Oh yeah.
How can you pick a bad record from that band? I mean, some people, well, maybe it's not quite, the style he got, they got a little more, I shouldn't say he, but they got a little more progressive in their style as they, with the latter albums. But, it still had that essence of death. It
Oh
still
yeah.
had the Chuck Schuldiner classic vocal, and although maybe the guitars were a little more polished and things like that, it still had the essence of death. So it was still called death. So I mean it was still death metal. So you can't go wrong with a band like that.
Oh no, of course not. Of course not. Have you actually met Chuck in person?
No, I never actually met him in person. Got to see him live a couple times in the '90s, but no, I actually never met him in person. No, I did not.
Cause I actually, even though I know I can't anymore, but like I really wish I did because there's so much I want to thank him for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cause Cause like I know because of because of YouTube actually nowadays you can go back and see so many things that were like so many interviews and like videos that were back in the day, and I saw a few interviews with him and I was like, oh, this guy, like I really wish I could just say something and say my actual thoughts to him. So I really, like I said before, I really thank him a lot for everything.
Nice.
So let me think what else I wanted to say. Also like when it comes to actually like collecting all your stuff actually did he ever think like you would ever get like so huge of a collection, like did he ever think like, oh, like do you think I would ever expand it to be this big?
No, when you're collecting it at the time, uh, you never, at least I didn't. I wasn't looking at the big picture. Back in the '90s, and when I started collecting these things, I didn't. I guess I never imagined what it would be like. I guess I couldn't imagine. Oh, one day I'm going to have 2,200 records. I guess I never thought of it that way. So no, I didn't. It was just my passion. So and that's all it is. And today, when I walk into the room and I see it, I think to myself, wow, that's a lie. So, you know, but I'm never going to stop collecting. I mean, as long as I'm alive and well, I'm going to continue. As a matter of fact, I just got a couple packages in today,
Oh, nice.
more on the way. Um, but yeah, no, I'll never stop. So it's only going to get it's only going to grow more. So
But what are some albums that you actually wish that you had that you actually always want to have?
a lot. There's a lot of records I wish I had. There's a few records that there's one in particular. It's a band called Bloodbath.
Oh, those
I
guys,
believe
yeah.
they were from Eastern Europe, like the Ukraine or somewhere out there. And they did one record. They did one record. I can't. The name's escaping me, but I've seen it on eBay throughout the years go for some very large amount of money. Literally, probably over $600 for this record. And of course, I would never pay that much for a record. So,
Yeah.
but it's a band called Bloodbath. I did hear it. I was able. I think it was on YouTube, so I was able to hear the record actually, and it sounded really cool. Very early death metal from back in the very late '80s. But so that's something that I saw. I've seen sell for big money. I heard and I thought it was really cool sounding. And as I saw, the pictures on eBay, I always thought, wow, that'd be kind of cool to have that record. But yeah, I'll never pay a price like that for a record. So that's probably one of those records I'll never have in my collection. But if I ever, I guess never say never. If I ever come across it for a decent price, you never know. Right?
Oh yeah, always keep looking for it. That's what I actually do. I always try to find it for like a much more decent price than just that. Cause I, just like you, I would never spend that much money on just a record.
No, absolutely not. That's now I have a limit of about $50 on a record. If I really, really see a record that's something I really want, it has escaped me, and I really wanted it for a long time. Um, I'm good with paying about up to $50 for a record, but anything beyond that, I won't. I typically won't dip in that far. actually probably it was probably about 3 years ago. I actually did get a record. It was the Raging Death compilation. It was one of, in my opinion, one of the first death metal compilation records that was ever produced. Um, and I had never owned that record, and always wanted to own a copy of it. But anytime I saw it, it was well over $100 more to get this particular record. I was in a record store, a local record store by my work about 3 years ago. It's actually a place called Disc Replay. And I went in there and I started looking at some CDs. They didn't have anything I needed. So I was about ready to walk out when, the record bin caught my eye. So I started going through the record bin. And there was this copy of Raging Death compilation album. My heart about sunk to my stomach when I saw it. The price tag on it was $49.99. So I looked at it. Now they only had the sleeve, and I had to take the sleeve up to the counter, and they show you the record. The record did have a couple of small scratches on it. It didn't affect play. The cover wasn't mint by any means. There was a couple little things wrong with the cover. So I pointed these particular things out to the fella at the counter, and he ended up taking $10 off. So I paid $40 for the record. So I think I got a pretty good deal with that record. And I finally got to it. So that was one of those records that I always wanted, and I just never got throughout the years until about 3 years ago. So for $40, which was a lot less than I thought I would ever pay for it. So I got one.
Awesome. Also, like a good story about me about like a vinyl I always wanted actually when I went to actually Italy actually in 2017, actually this is actually a great story. I just told someone this. I went to Italy actually just on vacation, and this guy who worked at the hotel we were staying in actually recognized one of my T-shirts I was wearing actually because I got it from one of the Metalhead box subscriptions. It was the band Blasphemy actually. I was wearing that shirt, and he recognized like the band very quickly actually, and then after that, he then told me that there was a record shop in the area in Rome, in Italy, where we were. So I went to that store actually that he told me about. He was very nice just to give me the address to that store. I was never expecting him to do such a nice deed, which I really appreciated him doing that at the time. And then I always wanted to find like this one vinyl 'cause I never had it in my life actually, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I can find it in this format. I was just like looking through like the vinyl rack actually there, like because they had like a whole bunch of like metal records actually, and I was like, I really want to like get like something really good. And in the corner of my eye on this like small staircase they had was actually a picture disc of Dark Throne's Blaze in the Northern Sky, and I couldn't be any happier because it was like that one moment. It just caught my eye. Like it felt like it wanted to like me to look and find it, and I was like, there it is. It's right
Yeah,
there.
awesome.
And
Awesome. Yeah.
of course, then I bought it, and I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Nice. Yeah, Blazer. That's a again one of those timeless pieces. Blaze in the Northern Sky. The Dark Throne's first album, Soul Side Journey, was a
Oh
lot
yeah.
different. Obviously, it
Oh
was
yeah.
more of a technical death metal record. And then when Blaze in the Northern Sky came out, that's a classic album. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
great. I'm glad you found it, man. That's awesome.
Oh, of course. Like I love telling that story too. This means a lot to me. Just buying it in like in a European like store actually in Italy. That's what means a lot to me.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's a good story.
Oh, of course. Thank you. Also like what would you say is like your actually yeah. Now I want to ask what's your favorite genre of metal of all time? Like your number one all time favorite.
Probably death metal.
Same here too.
Yeah, could be death metal. Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
definitely a death metal.
Iron Maiden's my favorite band of all time, but I, especially as I grow older, for whatever reason, I just find myself listening to more death metal, and I probably buy more death metal today than anything else. Because and I go in spurts. There are times when I just want to hear nothing but black metal. There are times when I just want to hear new wave of British heavy metal.
Oh
And
yeah.
there was a time there, like in the mid to late '90s, that I was really heavily into like the new wave of British heavy metal / heavy metal scene, and pretty much for a couple years that's all I was buying. A lot of heavy metal band CDs and things like that. But throughout the years, and especially like I said, as I get older in the last several years, I just seem to be buying and listening to more on a daily basis, a lot more death metal. So I would say today my a lot of my inspiration comes from death metal.
I'm definitely a death metal kind of dude myself. Like, I feel like that's the number one favorite genre for me. Like, if anyone ever said that, I'll be like, oh yeah, death metal. And then second for me is black metal because those two genres, I feel like I don't know, maybe you think the same as this. I don't know if you do, but I find them both to be like the most extreme out of like any of the other
Oh, absolutely.
genres because I'm like, yeah, these are like the most roughest and strongest and heaviest like albums that ever existed to me in the metal genres because they pack so much more punch than any other ones I've been listening to.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's yeah, they're the most extreme out of the metal genres. So yeah, for sure, it's death metal and black metal for sure. But like I said, there are some days, on a lazy Sunday morning, I just want to hear, maybe some old Judas Priest. I put
Yeah.
on some old Judas Priest or some, or maybe, and then when you listen to that, you kind of get in the mood for other things. That's there may go a whole Sunday where I'm just listening to nothing but classic heavy metal music. And and then I kind of get in that mood for the next couple days, and that's all I'm doing. But then the same thing will hit me, on a Friday night. If I'm grabbing a beer, and all of a sudden I want to hear, like you said, Dark Throne. I want to hear some Marduk, or some old Bathory or something. I put that on. Then the next thing you know, for the next 48 hours, I want to hear nothing but you know the most evil of black metal. So it's
Mm.
yeah, it just kind of it goes in. I go in moods. I get mood swings. So it depends on what I'm in the mood for, and then it just kind of goes from there. But yeah, but nowadays it's typically more death metal than anything else.
Awesome. No, but I get the same exact mood swings as well too. Actually, like one time I was like, I'm like I say this to myself too. I'm like, all right, Stefan. Like somehow I don't know. It's like a feeling I get. I'm like I'm into this. I want to get into. I'm like okay, now I feel like listening to death metal. Nothing, just that. And then the next day I'm like, oh, like a few days later I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little dark. I'm feeling a little cold and cold. I want to now listen to some black metal.
I hear you. I understand.
It happens like almost at any time of any day, really. So that's something that definitely occurs for me too, as well.
Absolutely.
And I also one thing I want to say also before like anything else, I gotta say, Ken, you really are an awesome dude.
I appreciate that. Thank you, and thank you for your support. Thank you for all your kind words, and
Of course,
you may want to edit this video before you put it on your YouTube channel because
I will.
we've been talking for quite a while. So I don't know if anybody wants to hear me talk that long. But in closing, I just want to say thank you to you, Stefan,
Oh, of
for
course,
for this interview and for talking to me. I really do appreciate it.
oh, of
I
course.
appreciate all the support you give to the channel and all the kind words. And again, and to anybody who's watching this and is subscribed to the channel, thank you very much for all of your support. I do appreciate it. And again, as long as as long as I have content to put up, and as long as others keep sending it to me, let's all keep this channel going, and we'll keep the crypt alive.
Oh, of course, no doubt about it.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate it once again, Stephen. Thanks for your time.
Oh, of course, no, it's an absolute, and thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this.
Uh,
It really
you're
means a
welcome.
lot to me.
You're welcome. Thank you. You have a pleasant evening, and we'll talk again soon.
Oh, of course, I would love to continue talking.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.
All right, you're very welcome, Ken. Thank you.
Bye bye.
All right, bye.